Just off the coast of southwest Ireland, in the Bay of Dingle, these men are getting ready to search the sea for an old warplane buried deep in these waters.
Go down, 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 down.
They'll be looking for the Badger Beauty, an American B-17 that crashed here more than 50 years ago. In this small village, it's a story that lives on everyone's tongue.
It's a real fairy tale to me.
They were young men in their 20s when they boarded the Badger Beauty. Not long after takeoff, the plane's engines failed.
Said my act of contrition and asked God to forgive me for my sins.
Now, 81-year-old Larry Ketterer will be returning to Ireland, the first American survivor to do so. And he will be joined by a father and son who are on a mission of their own.
I think it would be nice to see where my grandfather went.
This will truly be a journey to remember. Welcome to Journeys to Remember. I'm Bonnie Strauss, and if you haven't guessed it from the backdrop, we're in Ireland. And while things might look calm and tranquil at the moment, it was a different story over 50 years ago. That was during World War II, and as you're about to see, even the worst of times can bring out the very best in people. The Dingle Peninsula is lush and green and mountainous. The countryside has its share of farms, but everything here is surrounded by the sea. Life here borders between myth and reality. It's always been that way, and Ireland has certainly had its share of reality and its share of heroics. Our story begins in 1944. World War II was raging throughout Europe. And while Ireland was neutral, 250,000 Irish men and women went to England to enlist. "40,000 lost their lives. And back home, Ireland's Dingle Peninsula was the scene of dozens of military plane crashes.
They would have come in over this beautiful part of Ireland completely lost and would have dropped altitude to find out exactly where they were, not realising they were in an area of 3,000-foot summits.
It was May 29th, 1944. The Badger Beauty, a B-17, was carrying an 8-man crew, all but one an American. The B-17 Flying Fortress was one of the best-known heavy bombers. And in the final years of the war, many were used to check on the weather before bombing missions. That day, the Badger Beauty was collecting information in preparation for the Normandy invasion, but something went terribly wrong.
Right inboard engine misfired, and we can't maintain altitude, just 2 engines.
Larry Ketterer was the plane's co-pilot. From his home in Ohio, he recalls the event as if it were yesterday.
We knew we couldn't find a place to land in the dark because it was 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning.
Pilot Michael Lorenz was in charge that night. He made a bold decision, guided by a slice of the moon.
I think the good Lord made the moon come out at the time when we could see that range of mountains, and we turned away from them, went out toward the water, and we were so low that we knew we had to try to ditch on the water. Being a Catholic, I said my act of contrition and asked God to forgive me for my sins. we crashed and submerged. I think most of us were unconscious, knocked out. I know I came to, and I thought I was injured. I could taste blood on my lips. Pretty soon I realized I wasn't hurt. That was salt water I was tasting.
Miraculously, all 8 crew members survived. The men scrambled aboard 2 inflatable dinghies. Not long after that, the huge plane began its descent into the Atlantic.
It was kind of a sad few minutes there, watching the plane sink nose first, and then the tail way up in the air, and then all of a sudden going down like that.
Ever since that eerie night, the Badger Beauty has remained undisturbed some 300 feet below sea level.
OK, Laurence, up.
But now, that's about to change. These sea cowboys are hoping to photograph the plane, giving her one last moment of glory.
David, do we stay on the same position relative to the boat?
Yes, we're on the same position, Philip.
David Johnson and Philippe Hubert have brought a small underwater submersible from Scotland to help locate the plane.
I can turn in closer to the shore if you want to.
Fisherman Lawrence Courtney is the guide. He knows these waters well, having fished here half his life. When Lawrence is off the boat, he's on his banjo. And as he strums, you can hear the echoes of an ancient seafaring culture.
Right, sir. Okay, all the way, boys.
But at sea, he's all business. It's a matter of survival.
Once you go out there in those boats, you have to be prepared for the worst. And this is part of what they are really. This is part of what the sea people are. They're always there for each other, and they'll be there for anybody else that's in trouble.
And they were put to the test that night in May 1944. There were people in trouble, this time Americans. It's a story that most people in this area know by heart.
It's a real fairy tale, and it's like something that you wouldn't imagine that would happen. And it seems nicer and nicer each time you hear it. More exciting.
Take the old boy a bit further forward there.
But Lawrence realized he was dealing with more than a fairy tale after his fishing nets got caught on something strange.
You want to throw it over the side or what?
When we got up as far as where the end of the net was, we could see this was stuck in the mouth of the net,
Now, this banjo-playing fisherman will return to the spot where he found the tire, 3 miles from shore. And thanks to modern technology, there's a real chance that the rest of the plane will be seen once again. We return to the night of May 29th, 1944. The B-17, known as the Badger Beauty, has crashed into the ocean off the coast of Ireland. Larry Ketterer is in a dinghy headed to shore, and in many ways his troubles are just beginning. It was pitch dark and steep. Slippery cliffs had to be climbed one rock at a time.
Nathan and I were in the back of the boat. We paddled up, and he jumped out.
Larry is talking about Nathan Swerdlow, the plane's navigator. Because of what happened that night, Nathan will always be Larry's hero. Larry was terrified when he lost his footing.
I go to step out, and next thing I knew, I was hanging upside down banging my head on those rocks. It was a pretty good drop, 25 feet on bad rocks below. Nathan had a hold of my one ankle. And if he hadn't done that, why, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today.
After the war, Nathan married and had one son. He named him Alan. Alan can't remember his father talking about the crash. He had no idea that he was a hero. Nathan died when Alan was 10 years old.
My family had a tradition. When somebody dies, you don't talk about them again. It's not a good tradition. So it took maybe 40 years to be able to not only talk about this person, but to find something out about it. Here's my dad driving. So do you think I look like my father?
No.
Alan's son Nicholas is 10 years old, the same age Alan was when his father died. A few years ago, Nicholas began asking questions about his grandfather, questions that Alan couldn't answer.
This is what I have more or less left of him.
This collection is the result of exhaustive research. Alan was unrelenting in his attempt to piece together his father's life, one page at a time.
It was basically my father's World War II personal material.
Along the way, he learned about Larry Ketterer and the rescue.
I actually talked with Larry on a number of occasions, and Larry made me a cake. Sent me a cake in the mail one day.
You want a piece of this?
We call it war cake because it was made without shortening, and we needed all the shortening and the fats and things you could get to go into munitions factories.
You'll like that.
I opened the cake up, and there's a little note in it and said, this cake was made by my mother during the war, sent to me, and your dad and I used to sit and eat it. That was very touching.
What'd you say?
I thanked him. I told him that it was one of the nicest things that had ever happened to me. This is not a dispassionate inquiry. This has a lot of passion in it and a lot of emotion, and it connects me back to my father and my father back to his grandson. My father flew in one of these things. We're going to hopefully go down and see it again.
Alan decided that the best way for Nicholas to understand what happened that night was to travel to Ireland to retrace Nathan's steps.
I think it would be nice to go back there and actually see where my grandfather went.
They were excited to hear that Larry Ketterer would be joining them on this journey.
I think we're going to get it cold over in Ireland, and we'll have to have more clothes than I'm thinking about taking.
This would be Larry's first return trip to Europe since the war.
How do you want to start? With the big one or the little one?
Start with the big one.
Some of his children would be joining him.
I think it will be the memory of a lifetime. This is for the bright yellow finches.
Larry was determined to make this trip while there was still time. At 81, he's in failing health.
I feel like I wanted to do it for a long time. And this is an opportunity that I couldn't pass up, even if I had to go in a dinghy. The uniform doesn't fit me anymore, so I can't wear it.
Larry's home is filled with souvenirs of a past era.
And this fits you?
Look at that.
What does this say in terms of what you were able to accomplish?
It says I did my share. If you notice, this little pocket here is a co-pilot's window, see?
Larry knew that a search for the Badger Beauty would be taking place, and he was curious.
It'd give you a cold chill to see that plane with the wing broken, with the skin of the airplane deteriorating. That salt water does do that to the skin of an airplane. Eats it up.
Finding the plane was one thing, But the real journey for Larry would be the trip to Ireland to express his gratitude. He would be the first American from the Badger Beauty to return. And as you're about to learn, his life had been changed forever by the kindness of strangers.
Those Irish people just couldn't do enough for us. It's a kind of a thing you never forget.
The Dingle Peninsula in southwest Ireland is a melancholy land. Green and blue and moist from the sea. This mountainous region is surrounded by the Atlantic, and it's the Atlantic that's in charge here.
Here in Dingle, we receive people. We have lived all our lives from the sea, of the sea. Everything comes from the sea to them, the fish, the wind, the fine weather, the bad weather, whatever it is.
What is bread and breakfast?
Bed and breakfast?
Yeah.
Some enthusiastic visitors have just arrived in Dingle.
I mean, I love the bright colors.
Alan and Nicholas Swerdlow were the first to arrive. They were enchanted as they strolled the streets of this town of 1,500 people. Connecticut seemed so far away.
So different from home.
Yeah, our house is great.
In a matter of hours, they would be joined by a man they were anxious to meet. Second time around in Ireland, World War II pilot Larry Ketterer landed safely.
Happy day. Kind of smooth, too, wasn't it?
As he gazed out at the Irish landscape, he was transported back in time. His thoughts turned to Nathan Swerdlow, the man who saved his life here 55 years ago. Soon, he would meet Nathan's son.
I'm going to give him a big hug and pretend it's his father that I'm hugging. Maybe I'll just hug his grandson instead.
After many phone calls, this would be their first face-to-face encounter.
I've known Larry over the phone now for about 3 years. I think this is going to be very exciting. I think making these connections with people I didn't know that knew him is important. Larry, Alan Swerdlow.
I recognize your voice.
You do? How are you? Nice to meet you. So glad you can come.
Hi, Alan. I'm Sheila.
Alan Swerdlow.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. This is my son, Nicholas.
Oh, hello, Nicholas. Can I give you a hug?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of your granddaddy when I'm doing this.
I'm dying to meet you, Mr. Ketterer.
Yeah, that's right.
Who is this guy?
Well, that's me.
Alan
Yeah.
and Larry wasted no time catching up.
And I think this is you and my dad,
Yes.
possibly. And is that
This is the day.
pilot? Lorenz?
This is Lorenz, yes. In the middle, Nathan and myself.
The plane's pilot, Michael Lorenz, died a few years ago. His widow and daughters flew in for the reunion.
Hello. My name's Alan.
Oh, sure, you sort of look like your dad.
Really?
A little bit. Yes, I can
Yeah.
see a resemblance.
You know, it's quite special to be here. And it'll be special to hook up with the others and hear the other parts of the story, the parts that Dad didn't tell.
What their father didn't tell them was just how treacherous that night had been. His dinghy was lost at sea. The other dinghy had reached the shore, but now they were facing 100-foot cliffs. after climbing them, another challenge. Where would they find help? So the farm is right down over here, Larry. This is where you came.
That's the second house there, the one by itself.
Larry was thrilled to find the original farmhouse where he sought shelter.
My memory tells me that there was a thatched roof on this house when we came here 50-some years ago.
He soon became a Pied Piper as he took the others on a walk through history.
It was between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And of course, people don't get up that early, even in Ireland. There was a gate here. And we rattled the gate and hollered to see if we'd be welcome to come into the house or toward the house. And finally, a light went on brighter in that one window in the middle, and it was a Mr. O'Connor.
Their hosts, Morris and Ellen O'Connor, died many years ago, but some of their relatives still live across the road. As word of Larry's arrival spread, they rushed over looking for him. After all, no other American survivor had ever returned.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, just my father-in-law now that was in this house.
Let's warm your hands
Yeah.
up. You're cold.
They're cold and yours are lovely.
It was your
warm.
father-in-law?
Yeah, yeah.
Are these your children?
They're my kids, sir.
So these would
Yeah.
be the O'Connor's grandchildren?
Yeah.
Hello,
Yeah.
O'Connor's grandchildren.
Or-
Hello.
Were they proud of that night?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They always spoke of it.
Ah, here we go. Hello. Aha. This is a big fireplace that I remembered. Yeah, catch them. Oh, look at them run. My memory tells me that this fireplace was wide open. And we hung our clothes on this mantle so they would dry.
Larry and those in his dinghy were safe and sound, but others were still at sea. The O'Connors quickly organized a search mission. The bold villagers went out in boats like these to save the lives of all 4 airmen, including pilot Michael Lorenz.
This is where the boats were docked that they picked up, where they picked one up to go out to get her husband, Mike, and his crew.
So when you're standing here today, does it put you closer to your father or
Oh,
think?
yeah.
What?
Don't cry.
That's okay.
He never talked about the other half. And we hear of the other half and we're amazed. I mean, he talked about physically getting out of the airplane. He didn't talk about the dinghy. He didn't talk about being towed in. He didn't talk about the cold, the wet, the rocks, the danger. He didn't talk about any of that.
The rescue was an act of great heroism. The folks here were unwilling to let the ocean win without a fight.
Whether it's madness, or whether it's daring, or whether it's just part of what we're made of, we don't know. But this will to go and save people it was always very strong in this part of the country anyway.
Once the Badger Beauty crew was together, dry and fed, it was time for a modest celebration.
A bottle of whiskey would have to be given up if it was there, because it's a joyous occasion. They have beaten the elements, they have beaten the sea.
Whiskey was a rare commodity then, of course. You're talking World War II. There was rationing on, but I think on the night, was it Hannah Fitzgerald's people produced a bottle of whiskey to revive their spirits.
The O'Connors happened to have whiskey in their home that night because their daughter, Hannah Fitzgerald, was about to give birth. She named her baby Joe. Joe Fitzgerald lives in Dingle today. Because he was born just after the crash, his nickname is Badger Beauty. Larry went to meet him at his pub, only a mile from the farmhouse.
Hannah's brother was named Morris.
Morris, yes.
Yes.
Morris O'Connor would be my uncle.
And he went out in the boat, didn't he, to bring the second
in the canoe,
dinghy in?
In the canoe.
canoe?
Eileen is Joe's wife. She remembers that her mother-in-law kept in touch with the crew until her death in 1995.
Did you write to her every Christmas?
Used to. My wife was my scribe.
That's right. She loved getting these letters at Christmas from all of you.
Mm-hmm.
She was delighted to be part of it, and she wanted to help.
Why do you think they wanted to help the Americans?
I think it was the true Irish people. No matter who came to the door, they helped them. If they saw they were really in trouble.
Even when there was risk. By law, captured soldiers were supposed to be turned over to authorities and imprisoned. A violation was considered treason. The penalty, prison. But that didn't stop the villagers from protecting the Americans.
And because we were more neutral on one side than we were on the other, we had this secret undercover route for getting them back across the border. We like to do things our own way in Ireland anyway, but it was all top secret, very hush-hush. Nobody knew anything about it.
The survivors were put up at Benner's Hotel in downtown Dingle and hidden from public view.
I flopped in that bed, sound asleep. But Irish whiskey hits you pretty hard.
That would not be the last time Larry spent the night at Benner's. The hotel still stands today, 55 years later.
Go ahead, after you.
And Larry got to stay there once again, this time without the fear of getting caught. Thanks to the bravery and compassion of the Irish people, the Badger Beauty crew was smuggled to Northern Ireland, where they were eventually reunited with American troops. And what kind of gratitude did you feel towards the Irish for doing that?
Well, I loved them, that's all.
And as you're about to see, once again the Irish people would make a difference in Larry Ketterer's life as the search for his airplane continues. There's excitement this day in Dingle Harbor. This crusty old boat is hoping to find the B-17 that crashed here 55 years ago.
The main idea on this operation is to go as fast as possible.
These two men have brought special equipment to Ireland, hoping to photograph the plane. But 2 hours into the journey, it was clear that the sea was not going to cooperate. The crew was forced to head back.
The weather for today, I think, is bad. That is no good. Tomorrow, the main thing, when everything is ready, we just go and we see if we can find the right position for the boat to not move too much.
Would she be in good condition now, like after so long?
We don't know.
You don't know.
While the drama was taking place at sea, on land, the Americans were finding their own pieces of the plane, one at a time.
Wow.
Oh my head?
Is this the one you dragged up in your net?
It was full of sand.
It was full of sand?
Yeah, we had dragged it along for a bit, you know. We never knew we had it.
I didn't imagine it was this big, actually.
The next stop on the journey was Tom Kennedy's house. Mr. Kennedy is the only rescuer still alive.
Hello, are you Tom Kennedy?
Daughter, yes.
Daughter, oh, how do you do?
Eileen.
But Tom Kennedy was gravely ill.
How do you do?
Larry
I'm
Ketterer.
Larry Ketterer.
Larry's on the plane that night.
Oh, yes. So we've heard a lot about your father. How's he doing?
Not good.
Not good.
They were disappointed, but they would not be walking away empty-handed.
I have a part of the plane which my brother had got. A small piece of the plane. Did I tell you that, Adrian?
No. Do you have it here?
I do, yes.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I'll bring it out to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, cool.
Small part of the plane. Nicholas, what do you think?
The plane keeps appearing everywhere.
Of course. My gosh, did you know that?
No, I didn't know it.
Oh, wow.
And she's the daughter.
It didn't look like much, But to the people in this village, it was a piece of history.
I don't have any idea what that would come from.
What is this from?
Well, my brother said it was, you know,
From the plane.
from the
but
plane
Some kind of a strap.
when they went down.
So my father's plane was the only one that we know of that actually landed in the sea.
And from which people were rescued.
Later, Alan and Nicholas met with some of the townsfolks, including Bernie Gogan, a local historian. Bernie showed Nicholas something that he himself had treasured as a boy.
Whoa, what is that?
It may be the compass from the plane, but I'm not certain.
Nicholas was intrigued. After all, his grandfather was the plane's navigator.
If my grandfather actually used this, whoa, that would be cool. His grandson's holding it now.
Boeing was the manufacturer of the B-17. The company has confirmed that the tire, the metal strap, and the compass are all pieces of a B-17 bomber. There was another treat in store for Nicholas when T.P. O'Connor, the town's unofficial mayor, broke into song. It was an ancient tune about the sea. The next day, the ocean's mood had changed, and this time fisherman Lawrence Courtney was able to get his boat out into the open sea. The search for the plane would now continue.
That's the general area now.
They eventually arrived at the spot where Lawrence's net had hauled up the plane's tire.
Yeah, we go. Okay, that's enough. Go down, 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 down.
As the small machine inched its way to the ocean's mysterious bottom, video images were transmitted to the waiting crew.
13 meters from the bottom. 10 meters. 5. 1 meter. 1 meter from the bottom. Okay, we are on the bottom now.
Scanning the ocean floor, they saw nothing but sea creatures and sand.
Seen anything? No, not yet. You sure we are on a spot, huh?
He said you should be right on top now.
No, nothing at all.
4 hours later, just when they were about to give up, something caught their attention.
Safely? Not sure yet, but there's something here.
Something here.
It looked like some kind of metal fragment. And nearby, there was another.
That's definitely a piece of pipe sticking up in there.
Yeah. That's definitely a pipe.
Philippe thought it odd. 2 metal pipes in such an unlikely place, so far from shore. He began to suspect that they were part of the plane, and that it was now buried by a half a century of shifting sand.
So you think it's buried in the sand?
I really think so, yes.
Boeing has since confirmed Philippe's theory. In fact, the company believes that these fragments are part of the plane's engines.
Okay, Laurence, up.
The weary crew was satisfied. The mission was accomplished. They had located the Badger Beauty and sent her a message that she had not been forgotten. The Americans had come to this lyrical land on a mission, and they all found what they were looking for.
Wow, what unbelievable.
As Alan and Nicholas Swerdlow walked the windswept cliffs that Alan's father had scaled, they had a much better sense of the man they had come to find.
This is the area where my dad went up. They climbed right from up there, right over the cliffs, and they walked in.
I'm really proud of what he did in the war.
I am very happy that having lost my father for the last 40 years, I've been able to come back here and recapture some of that time. And it's been very important to now allow my son to have a bit of history and a bit of feeling for his grandfather.
They dropped off in a lovely spot.
Yes, they were.
So that you'd have to come back to see it.
For the family of pilot Michael Lorenz, it was the connection with the Irish people that would live on.
We have something for you.
Yes, yes.
This is the one that was here yesterday?
Here yesterday.
He's the co-pilot.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
This is our father.
Yes. There they are. And this man over remembers the morning it happened.
Johnny Griffin is one of the few who remembers when the Badger Beauty ditched at sea.
29th of May 1945, unless I'm mistaken.
You remember?
I wouldn't remember it. But if I know, I'll show you the plaque. Come on here.
Outside of Fitzgerald's pub, there's a plaque that commemorates the night of the rescue.
That's Irish.
And what does that mean?
God loved them. They got a chance, no doubt about it, they were lucky.
They were lucky.
Yes,
I should say they were.
Boy.
I never thought we would be here. I just never thought we would. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be together, and he's the only one that's missing. So, I wish he was here.
Legend merges into history here, and then there's tradition. Many traditions have remained unchanged in Dingle over the years. The celebration of Corpus Christi is one of them. This religious holiday is a summer ritual. Although exhausted by the trip, Larry Ketterer felt honored to join the procession. And frequently that day, Larry heard people whisper, "There he is, the veteran."
We should never forget the sacrifices that these young men made. And for as long as I live and for as long as there's breath in me, I will always remember young Americans who paid the ultimate. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be free today.
Just love us for things that we did, which we didn't think were exciting or important, but it's a big milestone in their life, and they can say thanks to somebody.
In Banbridge town and County Down, one morning last July, down the morning green came a sweet colleen, and she smiled as she passed me by. She looked so sweet from the two bare feet, and the she never looked.
And that night, there was another celebration.
Good man yourself.
Larry was flanked by two of his daughters.
And I would like to, all of you, to raise your glasses in a toast to our very good friend and wish you a happy 81st birthday. God bless you. Cheers. Slán.
I am pleased to be here. It's something that lived in my heart for years, and I'm so happy to be able to come back here and say words like this. I expend my heartfelt thanks. The real heroes are those that are laying overseas in their graves. It makes me get teary-eyed when I think of them, and I get the glory about coming back here and representing them. I'm real pleased that I had a chance to do that.
After the crash of the Badger Beauty, Larry Ketterer went on to fly 26 more missions for our country. This has been an unforgettable experience for me and for all of the people connected to the Badger Beauty, as well as for the people of Dingle, who have kept this story alive for so many years. For Journeys to Remember, I'm Bonnie Strauss. Thanks for joining us, and farewell from the Emerald Isle.